Hi everybody, I'm Daniel Tisch, CEO of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and it's my pleasure to welcome you back to the 2024 Ontario Business Achievement Awards, brought to you by our series presenting partner, Canadian National Railway. Our theme for this year is building resilience in a changing economy. And that's because whether it's adapting to challenge or leveraging innovation, Ontario businesses are responding to economic change with a powerful resolve to drive growth both at home and abroad. So in this episode, we're looking at how the Ontario construction industry is building our future. And before we go any further, I want to offer a big thanks to our episode partner, Northbridge Insurance, because without them, this would not be possible. When we start to think about work in construction, there's so many considerations, and so we've brought together some experts to break it down for us. To help get us started, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Julie Martini, to tell us more. Julie?
Thanks, Dan. Ontario's construction sector provides hundreds of thousands of jobs for our province through builders and unions. As the number of new projects continue to grow, the strong demand demonstrates that Ontario is experiencing economic growth and resilience. For example, while Canada's construction market size was $351.1 billion in 2023, the projected annual average growth rate for 2025 to 2028 is over 2%. For even more interesting facts, have a look at this.
Getting 300 million tons of freight to market and powering the economic growth of a nation, that takes a lot. It takes fortitude and focus, a strong footprint, and a commitment to reducing it. It takes partnerships, communities, collaboration. It takes a vision and care for one another. It takes all of us together into the future.
We're so grateful to our OBAA series presenting partner, CN. Earlier, I had the opportunity to sit down with some truly knowledgeable individuals willing to provide us with a better understanding of some of the challenges and important considerations the construction industry is facing. Brooke Hayward is the Chief Operating Officer of 214 Carson Co., a real estate and construction company located in Paris, Ontario. 214 has a primary focus on industrial development, also serving the commercial and residential sectors. Brian Hutchings was appointed the City of Brantford's Chief Administrative Officer in August 2019. Guided by the policies and priorities of Council, he leads the single-tier City of Brantford and brings together the efforts of all departments, ensuring that the city's programs and services meet the demands and expectations of the community. Giovanni Cotillo is the President and Chief Operating Officer of the Ontario General Contractors Association. The OGCA represents 200 of the safest and most innovative general contractors throughout Ontario, including small, medium, and large firms. I started off by asking them what the biggest challenge facing the construction industry is today. Talk to me a little bit about building code regulations, and are they different from province to province?
They definitely are, from province to province. And that's different provincial regulations, different provinces have different regulations. The same with planning. I mean, we talk about building codes, but most contractors and developers have to go through planning, and planning is different from province to province, and it's changed dramatically in the last 2 years. Every month we seem to get another announcement, but also interpretation. And we talk about regulations and legislation, but also every municipality interprets regulations and legislation a little bit differently. So I feel for a lot of the contractors and developers because things are always done a little bit different from place to place.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment, Brian, but I can really voice a frustration from the contractor side when it comes down to it. So in Ontario, we have 444 different municipalities. So think of 444 different agendas. There's no standardized contracts, there's no standardized regulation, and so each one does something a little bit differently. And it is beyond frustrating from a contractor standpoint where I'm doing work on one side of the street and it's one way, and then to do work on the other side of the street and everything changes. And so I would love for a standardized function right across the province. Actually, even nationally would make sense because we can take from other provinces. If you look at environmental assessments and whatnot, we go through 104 permits in order to put a shovel in the ground, while in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, they have 4. So there has to be an expedited way of doing things instead of this laborious layer upon layer of bureaucracy that really provides us with a level of frustration. And I would say the buyers of construction, because they can't get their projects built fast enough based on the fact that we have all these encumbrances.
Part of my job is, and believe it or not, is trying to find, people to pay the least amount of property taxes they possibly can. That's all I do all day long, try to find efficiencies. To Giovanni's point, to the 104 regulations, he's right. But I have people with professional standards, who have to follow those standards and those regulations and go through them all, so they'll stick to that script. But because we have to do all of it, it means extra labor for me, extra people I need to hire to go through all those regulations and those sorts of things. If I don't have to hire them, the development fees go down, property tax would go down, those sorts of things all go down. But we have to follow our professional standards. So this is one we're actually kind of vehemently agreeing on, I think, but from our end, it would cut some costs and actually get some speed, but we have to follow them, which then takes the contracting side through the whole process as well. So it's an interesting dilemma, but we face.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I think municipalities are starting to adopt things like green light committees and things of that nature, which essentially provides more transparency to everyone involved in the process and try to speed up the process, because site plan approval should not take 12 months. Quite frankly, it shouldn't take more than 12 weeks. So there's certain types of measures that are being put into place so that there's visibility between the applicants, the professionals that perhaps are submitting on their behalf, like the engineering firms, and then the municipal representation, and councillors even for that matter. So when their constituents are calling, they can speak with confidence about where it's at in the process so that everyone can see online where things are at and who needs to action something to move it along. Because oftentimes people are all pointing fingers, and do we really know who's to blame?
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges facing your industry, including red tape. So let's talk a little bit about solutions. So if you had a magic wand, what supply chain issue would you solve? Brooke, do you want to kick us off with that one?
Sure. I think the biggest thing that we'd be looking to solve is more product manufactured domestically and reduce lead times. So we've really had to be proactive with our procurement methods as opposed to reactive, which was certainly highlighted throughout COVID when lead times became significantly longer for everything. So it's had to have us look really hard at what our procurement is and forecast long in advance. There's certain products right now, to use an example, electrical products like switchgear or transformers with lead times that are 12 months in advance. So we're having to do things like forecast what our needs are going to be and then do capital cash outlays to purchase that product in advance to have it on hand so we don't slow down construction.
If you get the contract right and the scope of work right and whatnot, then, you know, perhaps we can deal with the schedules on the back end. I totally agree with Brooke when it comes down to the supply chain being uprooted somewhat because of COVID and everything. But we also need the buyers of construction to understand that concept and based on that, then work with us on the contract side.
Giovanni, are you seeing that the public sector on contracts, as an example, are open to substitutions for alternative products if that happens?
Unfortunately, a lot of the contracts that we see are very rigid in that, and they don't allow for that substitution. There is a concept that either the architect or the engineer has for the finished product, and they want that specific item, these windows, that look, which is great and all, but to Brooke's point, it just extends the timeline for supply and sometimes makes it double and 3 times what it should be when if we source things locally based on that. But if it's not in the contract, we can't even broach that subject.
People don't know where Brantford is, but we're 105,000 people. We're like a good professional athlete. What I mean by that, we're big enough, we have mass, but we're also nimble. I did 105 capital projects last year. 8 were over budget. Those 8 I had to go back to council, and everybody hears we're over budget in those 8. They don't hear about the 97 I was on budget and on time, right? And so many times, many staff stick by rigidity. You're not rewarded for flexibility. You're actually penalized for flexibility a lot of times from our angle.
So what I'm hearing is begin with the end in mind and a little bit of flexibility.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Nothing about the nimbleness. I really like
and
that
nimbleness,
quote.
and nimbleness, and nimbleness. All right. This has been a great discussion so far, and there's definitely more to talk about. After a quick break, we'll unpack some additional questions about recruiting strategies, the use of technology in construction, and environmental considerations within the industry. We'll return in just a moment.
The Canadian construction industry plays a vital role in our economy and in our everyday lives. And it's rapidly evolving, today more than ever. In a business where time is money, you need partners who not only understand your challenges, but can help you finish your projects safely, on schedule, and on budget. At Northbridge Insurance, we offer in-depth industry expertise, relationships with Canada's top construction brokers, and a range of tailored solutions that you need to help protect your business and keep it moving forward, so you can worry less about your risks and focus more on the opportunities. And together, we can build a safer and brighter future.
Thanks so much to our partners at Northbridge who have made this conversation possible. Can you share an effective method for meeting your labor requirements? Brooke, how about we start with you?
Sure. So for us, what we started with was building a brand that was well-known, reputable, and something that people wanted to be affiliated with, and then creating a culture. And that culture was something that we knew would be very important to strike that life-work balance.
So we have a fun at work team. We've got a great education program. We've also got an employee recognition team. Try to do as much as we possibly can. We've gone totally hybrid environments. Many staff like that. Many staff are coming into the office. So providing that flexibility to the workforce to make them happy, and we've seen results. We've seen less sick time being used. We've seen more productivity. It seems to be working by keeping our employees very happy and keeping them less windshield time.
So I agree with both of you on your points, but there's still the point about you've got to bring people in order to show them the culture and show them, all how fascinating, how amazing your organizations are. So what we've done at the OGCA is create a pathways to ICI construction, ICI industrial, commercial, institutional. What we've done is parlay the skills development fund money that the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training and Skills Development has offered out to the industry. That keeps growing because they want solutions based from the industry for the industry. So what we've done is we've got bridging programs that allow for new graduates that come into, say, the project management kind of sphere, or newcomers to Canada that fit that requirement. And we give them the fundamental skills that they require in order to transition onto our job sites and to be successful.
So build a strong culture, walk the talk, and promote how great the industry is. Draw them in. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. On to our next question, technology. So love it or hate it, it's part of our daily lives. But in terms of the construction industry, would you say it's had a positive impact, negative impact?
When you say technology, I assume that you're asking a specific technology. What I'd like to highlight is the fact that from a construction standpoint, we're incredibly innovative in our technology and how we absorb it into our daily lives. We don't talk enough about this, but we don't do things in the very old sense where it's like, okay, a check mark on a clipboard anymore. All the supervisors and foremen on site have tablets. And so when we get a load of product, say aggregate or whatever, we hit a button on the thing, and that tablet then communicates to the rest of the company immediately, in real time, live. The load has been received, process the PO, check the check, order the next order. That is all integrated now. And so that technology on the administrative side has been a life changer for all construction companies.
I love that, Giovanni, and it's so accurate. And I would say that the efficiencies that we found as a whole as a result of technology advancements are immeasurable. Like, as opposed to having to have someone standing in the field with a measuring stick when you're doing site works, you now have GPS equipment on all of your equipment that really just makes it far more efficient, it saves money, it's more accurate.
In the past 5 years, we've seen a huge change in technology. The city of Brantford, and thanks to the province of Ontario for helping us fund a lot of this, but we've gone electronic and everything. All our planning applications, our building department has gone electronic. We spent so much time where a politician would phone and say, where is, this project? And then the contractor phone, where is my file? And, wanting to know where the progress is. We've gone almost like totally online. Everybody can see it. It's tri-focused, and we're moving ahead on that. So it's saved us a lot of time, and it's expedited a lot of the projects in the city.
Overall, it sounds like technology has had a overwhelmingly positive impact on the industry. All right, so that brings us to our final question, another hot topic, climate change. How has that impacted the construction industry?
I'm a 150-year-old city that was built with a river running through it. That's 25 to 30% of our city is in a floodplain. So we have pipes that are 100 years old in our downtown. With these rapid rainfalls, we have a lot. They were built much smaller standards, much smaller pipes, and we're seeing lots of flooding and various things. At the same time, we've got that challenge, but we've also got this other new challenge of, our council has declared a climate emergency. Every report we write to our council has to have a paragraph about what that does for the climate and the effect on it. At the same time, we've also gone net zero. So we have the hardest time, when we go to council, this project should be 30 million, but it's 35 because we're doing net zero, and they're not looking at the life cycle costing of the project. They're looking at what's facing them today, the taxpayer today versus a long-term effect. So it's that dilemma. I've got both ends. I'm trying to fix 100-year-old pipes, but also trying to build new buildings that are on new environmental standards and what have you. So it's interesting times, to say the least, and we saw with the recent rains in the summer that how many cities were affected by that.
For the first 8 years of my professional career at a university, I was the director of the renewable energy division for the municipality of Brant, and I was tasked essentially to drive the sustainable initiatives on behalf of the municipality and making sure that we were showing the return on investment to council and to the taxpayers so that you don't just get caught up in greenwashing, right, and doing things because it's a buzzword. And we do that today. We future-proof the developments that we do when it makes sense. So we reinforce the roof for solar. We put conduits at minimum in the parking lot for EV charging stations. We look at bioswales, passive solar. But again, the return on investment has to make sense, or you're going to outprice yourself on things. So that fiscal responsibility needs to be balanced with the social and environmental responsibility.
Our biggest difficulty on the contractor side is the ambiguity of it all. When you have, oh, let's be environmental about that. Well, what does that mean? Define it for me. And so if you say build a bioswale, we know what that means. Put in conduit, we know what that means. When you have a councillor and they say, we should be more green, okay, define that. Without that definition, without that proper scope of work, the amount of money you can throw at something is immeasurable. And it doesn't make sense to have a checkbox on a sheet to say, oh, we're green because our contracts say we're green, or we're sustainable, or we're working toward climate change, or whatever the case is. Unless you have quantifiable, definable, achievable goals, all of this is a hamster wheel.
We want to thank our guests, Giovanni Cotito of OGCA, Brian Hutchings from the City of Brantford, and Brooke Hayward from 214 Carson Co. It has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for the bubble.
What do you?
Great day.
Yeah.
For over a century, Ontario's Chambers of Commerce and Boards of Trade have been a driving force, supporting both communities and businesses. Through challenges, we've stood strong, connecting voices and advocating for what matters most. In the spirit of collaboration, we find strength. A network of over 60,000 business owners shaping the future of our province by driving sustainable economic growth and cultivating resilient communities. We are your community partners. Together, we are unstoppable. For more information, visit www.occ.ca/chamber-network-directory.
Well, thanks, Julie, for facilitating that fascinating discussion. Dare I say, you nailed it. Things are changing incredibly fast in this industry, but it's encouraging to know that leaders like Brian and Brooke and Giovanni have their fingers on the pulse. As our province and our country continue to build, we're inspired by their commitment and their vision for safety and growth. So as we wrap this episode, I want to thank, as always, our series presenting partner, Canadian National Railway, and our episode partner, Northbridge Insurance. Finally, thanks to you, our viewers. Don't forget to join the conversation. You can find the Ontario Chamber on LinkedIn, on X, on Facebook, and on Instagram. So until next time, stay connected and stay inspired.